Hi everyone, I'm Shelley and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back for another question the narrative video, and today we're going to explore cartography just for a little bit. Not an extensive research into it, but I just wanted to touch on a few things that actually came up after I posted this image on my Instagram feed a few weeks ago. And it's a photo of the 1927 Universal Studios Globe Earth logo. And it says, "How did Hollywood know what the Earth looked like before NASA?" And it's a 1927 globe image before NASA's in 1972. And yes, 1927 was obviously before anyone had ever flown high enough that they could possibly see what the Earth looked like in any accurate sort of way. Yet, what I have here, this is a high def version of the 1972 NASA image of the Earth that they claim to have given us when they went up there. So again, this is a high def version that was made by NASA. And what I want you to just really look at is the outline, the borders of the continents, the shape of the continents, the placement. And even though, we can only see North and South America here, the reason that I took this image of it was because that is what we can see in this one. And as you can tell, the borders are pretty bang on for 1927, again, when they were never flying high enough to know what it actually looked like. And even the placement is pretty similar to what we're seeing here in the 1972 model. And a lot of people really took offense to that because I would, well, they do take offense to that when you are questioning the shape of the Earth. And they didn't seem to think that there was anything wrong with the idea that in 1927 they would have an almost 100% accurate model in comparison to what NASA showed us almost 50 years later, when again, there was no way to verify what the outline of these continents actually looked like because no one was flying high enough. And for some reason, people really have an issue with that. And I actually had several people comment to me and they said to me, well, it's because of cartography, of course. And a lot of people since they get upset about this, they also get very condescending and they make it seem as if you never went to school, which I know obviously school is mainly indoctrination, especially today, but they make it sound as if you never possibly could have heard of something such as cartography. And so what I want to point out is that I went to school. I know what cartography is. And cartography, I'll just show you, is the study and practice of making and using maps. So I know what cartography is. And even when it comes to all of these subjects that I'm covering in my Question the Narrative series, people always come at me and just regurgitate what they learned in school as if I didn't hear those same things. But the difference is that yes, I heard those same things and I believed those same things for years. I didn't even think to question them, because again, we're just taught to repeat back what we've learned. And that's what so many people do to me. But I have to tell you that those of us who look into these things, we've heard all of these things already. The difference is that we don't just accept it and move on. We actually dig into it and think about how could this possibly have been done. And so that's what I wanted to talk about. Someone actually in one of the comments left me a link to about cartography in an encyclopedia, again, as if I didn't know what cartography was. So I just wanted to show you something on Wikipedia, which I'm going to tell you Wikipedia is pretty shady, and I don't believe half of what's on Wikipedia because pretty much anyone can edit it, and these things are all going to be biased. But when it is something that actually puts a little bit of suspicion onto a commonly accepted practice, that makes me think, there might be a little bit of merit in what they're saying. So here's what I wanted to show you about cartography. So, and I'll leave the link for this, but it's not hard to look this up in Wikipedia. But and I'm certainly not going to go over all of this. I just wanted to go over this. Although cartography has been a target of much criticism in recent decades, a cartographer's black box always seemed to be naturally defended to the point where it overcame the criticism. However, to later scholars in the field, it was evident that cultural influences dominate mapmaking. For instance, certain Abstracts on maps and the map-making society itself describe the social influences on the production of maps. This social play on cartographic knowledge produces the order of maps, features, and the hierarchies of its practices. So further down here, we're going to read in the cartographic errors section, because a lot of people think that cartography is an exact science, and it certainly is not. Some maps contain deliberate errors, or I want to point that out to you, deliberate errors or distortions, either as propaganda or as a watermark to help the copyright owner identify infringement if the error appears in competitors' maps. The latter often come in the form of non-existent, misnamed, or misspelled trap streets. Other names and forms for this are paper towns, fictitious entries, and copyright Easter eggs. Another motive for deliberate errors is cartographic vandalism, a map maker wishing to leave their mark on the work. And then it just gives some examples of where this happened. So when we especially look at deliberate errors and propaganda, I'm going to wager that it is a very good chance that, since we know that Hollywood is part of the one world propaganda order, this was propaganda, just as this is propaganda. And what I'm going to tell you is that the reason that the two of them look so astonishingly similar is because they are both made up off of the same model. Now, obviously, you can tell that this is, CGI, which even NASA will tell you that their images are CGI or photoshopped. But obviously, since this was a high def version, the reason that I didn't use the 1972 one itself was just because there was cloud cover and everything. And this one, it just shows a clear image of the outline, but you can look it up yourself. This is just the high def image that was created of the 1972 image that NASA provided of the Earth. But it's all coming from the same place. And I honestly don't believe that NASA took a picture from space. I think the reason that they look so much the same is because they already had the model in mind, and that's just how they created it to show the world and said, yeah, look, this is a picture that we took of the Earth. And yeah, it just so happens to look like the one from 1927. Sorry, folks. Cartography was not so great that it was going to be able to get all of those borders correct, the placement correct. I mean, if you actually look at the details, here, I actually have another one. Let me find it. Not that one. This one. Okay. So this is a colorized version. I think that they just colorized it in 1936, but it's the same one. And let's just take a look at this. Look at the borders. So we'll just look specifically right here for now. Pretty darn similar. And let's look at the islands here. Pretty darn similar. And you would expect if something like this was created, we'll look up here and see if maybe this could have been on this one. A little hard to see on this one. But you would think that 50 years later that there would have been some sort of obvious error on this globe that was presented to us at that point in time, yet there wasn't. And again, the reason that there wasn't an error was because they're all based off of the same illustration, the same fictional rendition. And so, yes, they tell us right here that they are used as propaganda. So you cannot use cartography as, some sort of be-all and end-all reasoning for how 1927 globe Earth was exactly like the one from 1972. Because I'm sorry, and I'm not saying that cartography doesn't exist. I'm not saying that there aren't some really good cartographers out there, but what I am saying is that they are telling us right here that it's been used as propaganda. There are deliberate errors. There are deliberate distortions. So we can't just use the cartography as our answer because it's a pat answer. It does not it doesn't explain anything. Now, what I do have to say though is that this also, it does kind of put a little bit of a damper on other maps for me as well, though, because it tells us that there are paper towns, fictitious entries, copyright Easter eggs. Not really sure what that is. A message, image, or feature hidden in a software or video game. Okay. Well, but when we're talking about that they were adding paper towns and fictitious entries and everything, then the first thing that I thought of, well, I love looking at maps. I've loved looking at the maps of Tartaria with all of the beautiful towns and forests and everything listed. We've got this one. I have this one hanging on my wall. It's the North Pole map. And this one actually has, it talks about pygmies that were living up there in the North Pole area. And, you know, the whole thing is just fascinating. And also we have the Friesland up here because a lot of maps have a little, and it's down here too, a little island called Friesland, which disappeared on later maps. And so some people believe that maybe it was submerged. And that very well could have been the case. But, you know, I have to start asking the same thing. Could any of these things that we're looking at could they have been considered paper towns? That's not the one I'm looking at. I did have another one. And we do have this map here too. And I'm just showing you examples of maps because a lot of these older maps do have, they're beautiful. They're beautifully illustrated. Some of them even have like sea monsters in them. Is that what that is down here? Looks like that to me, or some kind of sea creature. And so they're really fun to look at. And oh, I see Tartaria is on this one as well. But I'm just wondering, you know, it's sad that we just live in a world where you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. Now, I do have to say that going back to the North Pole map, now this one does actually match with a lot of the stories that we are told by explorers about like the four rivers that go in. I believe that two flow in one direction, two in the other. I could be wrong. But, you know, so I'm not saying that I think that these maps are fake. But what I'm saying is that there's a possibility that there are deliberate errors on these maps as well. And just as there is the possibility that, well, I would say probability that the one that we are looking at as being, you know, the Earth, that is propaganda. And I don't think, I think that it's time that people just start, use your brains. Just because you were told something in school doesn't mean that you have to flippantly accept it. It's okay to look into things and try to figure out how they could have possibly worked, and do they even make sense? And really, if you are going into an area that you disagree with, stop and ask yourself before criticizing the people who are asking these questions. Ask yourself, have I really looked into this? Have I really looked into every aspect of it? Or am I just regurgitating what I've been told? Because unfortunately, we've been conditioned to do that. And I think that that is something that we're definitely doing when it comes to what shape the earth is. And cartography, it's not the answer. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.